So right now I'm in La Violeta, Ecuador. This is a place you've heard me talk about many times. It's a beautiful day, kind of overcast. Everything green is just popping with life. You know, this place where I'm standing right now is a mini orange grove. There's sweet and there's sour oranges being grown all over this property. You've seen in some of our footage that much of this campus has already been developed. There's a lot of buildings for study and eating and sleeping quarters. Really great. But there's a huge chunk of land, probably a good 10 to 15 acres, that's totally undeveloped. The reason I'm mentioning it to you is this. I just came from a meeting with about 20 18 to 23-year-olds telling me, what can we do to better develop this undeveloped land, to create opportunities for economic development for our people? You know, they come from this community that's desperately poor. Many people just inching by day, barely being able to provide for themselves. But these young people are thinking in terms of economic development. What can we do to create a better and brighter future for tomorrow? So they're thinking about planting and harvesting and getting that to market. You know, the reason I'm even mentioning this to you right now is this. It is just so completely opposite of practically every place else I go in the world. Many times I go into desperately poor communities and they're asking, what can you do to help us? How can you pay for this? How can you provide this? Because we lack these things. And certainly there's a certain obligation that the church has to those who lack basic essentials in life. But don't you just once in your life want to come alongside of people who really want to improve their own life, who are already motivated to do that, who you know with just a little bit of strategic kind of investment, that these people begin to help themselves and create a future that's not dependent on outside entities? One of the reasons I'm doing this entire series, Taking Care of Business, is so that we as a church might better steward our own business people. And once we understand how to do that more effectively, we might be able to come alongside of communities like La Violeta and say, if you want to get it done, here are the things that are essential. These are the things that we learned along the way. And these are the things that create great economic opportunity. I mean, this is not just giving a man a fish. This is teaching him to fish. This is teaching him to build a fishing business. This is teaching him to have a hope in the future. Okay, so this really impacted me to hear these young people because, you know, I've been in slums, I've been in deep pockets of poverty all around the world, and typically you get a fair amount of begging, and I get that. I mean, deep poverty wounds people, and they feel very desperate, and they ask for anything and everything, you know? And this is a community that's like that, that's desperately poor. But they weren't asking, can you buy us a tractor? Can you bring us seeds? They said, can you help us be better business people? Because you see what's happening in La Violeta and all throughout Ecuador, these indigenous people, they will have goods and they'll have services and they'll have crops and they're really valuable. And some middleman approaches those people and say, hey, I'll pay you so much for that work or this good or whatever that is. And it's usually, you know, a penance. It's not enough. And they pay him that. And then they take it to market and they make all the money from it. So this middle guy, what he does is occasionally he decides he wants to get it cheaper. And so for 2 months, he won't even buy from him to make him more desperate and to drive the price down. And then he comes back. He said, okay, I'll take some, but I'm not paying what I paid before. And this happens all around the world. People will exploit vulnerable people so that they can gain the advantage and make the money. So what if as a church, because of what we're beginning here, we begin to steward our businesses better. We begin to understand what it means to start up businesses that pay people well, that offer goods and services that are worth having, that you don't have somebody at the top that's extracting all the profit for themselves, that we really are creating just businesses. We are creating the kind of businesses that reflect God's kingdom heart. If we learn to do that really well, and then we come alongside people who are already very motivated to help themselves, and we begin to coach them and show them how to cut this middle guy out of the picture altogether and get their goods and their services to market where they get a fair value for what they're doing. I mean, this could be really huge for the kingdom. Let me tell you something, friends. I know a lot of pastors in the Metroplex. I know a lot of churches. A lot of churches do the easy thing. You know what the easy thing is? Oh, we're going to take a mission trip. We're going to go build homes and houses for people in Mexico.
Or, oh, hey, we're going to go fill up this shipping container with a bunch of clothes and we're going to ship it off to this community that has no clothes without ever thinking about the implications of what they're doing. You know, one of the things I've learned over the years is you never do for people what they're capable of doing for themselves. You don't do that because when you do that, you make their poverty even worse. A person that had no resources, financial resources, now all of a sudden feels impoverished in their ability and impoverished in their minds because somebody came and did for them what they could do for themselves. You always want to help people, but you don't want to hurt people. And you hurt people when you step in and do things for people that they can do for themselves. But when you get people motivated and saying, hey, we've got some resources right here, and we want to maximize those resources, and we want to create a future for our community, that's what I think God's calling us to do. It's the harder thing. It's the more challenging thing. It's easy to go and do things for other people, but sometimes the damage done in the name of helping people is not worth it. I think God's calling us to do the more difficult task of coming in real relationship and solidarity with the world's poor in places like Badagry, Nigeria, and La Violeta, Ecuador, and saying, what can we do now together as the family of God? So that's my challenge, and that's what I hope that we see as our business people continue, whether you work for someone, whether you own your own company, whatever it may be. We've got all kinds of creativity in this room. Let's figure out how to do this here so that we better serve our brothers and sisters around the world. And for you today, maybe it is that you've been thinking, I just need to change my job. Maybe you do. But maybe it is you need to change the way you do your job. Maybe it is you need to start thinking about your primary calling first. You're called to belong to Jesus. You're called to follow him in his word. You're called to be a saint, one set apart for God's purposes. That's your calling. That's primary. Get that right, the rest starts falling into place. When you do that, then you begin to understand you have a ministry. You have a ministry at work. There are people you're rubbing shoulders with right now. You're already preaching your sermon. Even if you've never said a word, your life is preaching about what you think it means to serve God in the world. Let that message be loud and clear and strong for Jesus so you earn the right to be heard. You have a ministry also of work, that God is using your work environment to more fully form Jesus Christ in you. Cooperate with what he's doing. Allow spiritual formation to happen on the job. And then you have a ministry to work. We're called into the marketplace to do things the way a Christ follower would do things. Let's follow him boldly. Let's follow him with excellence. Let's lead with love. Let's pray.